Good evening. My name is Leanne, and I'm with the Clovis Unified Family Resource Center, and I'd like to welcome you to tonight's presentation about transition at age 3. We have teachers Desiree and Leah joining us tonight, and I'm so grateful for that. So let's go over the basics. We have a video set to off and mics are muted to limit distractions. Handouts are available in a Google Drive, and you can post your questions in a chat box. I'd like to tell you a little bit about the Clovis Family Resource Center. We're here to help you navigate your way through early intervention and then after age 3, special education throughout all of Clovis Unified. I am here for that family support, and I want you to know you can reach out to me, and whether you're looking to connect with resources out in the community or within the district. Here's a few pictures of the Family Resource Center. Again, it is located with the CITI Kids program on the Century Elementary campus. And so I would encourage families to check out the Family Resource Center website at CUSD.com, and you can just search Family Resource Center. It's under special education. And again, if you don't have time to write this down, just email me.
Okay, well, you guys are here at our meeting just to kind of get more familiar about the transition process. So most of your children are here because you're in early intervention through Central Valley Regional Center. And so this kind of presents, what is a transition? What does that transition mean? So a transition is part of the Ifsp, which is the Individual Family Service Plan, and that's the document service for the Central Valley Regional Center. So most of you came in with the regional center through an assessment, and you got referred to us through them. And their early start services will end at the age of 3, regardless of what age your child started the services. So some of our kids come in at the transition time, and so those services will end at the age of 3. At the age of 3, the LEA, which is the local school district, is then responsible for any educational-based services to see if your child qualifies for those. And then after the age of 3, the legal documentation that will outline the services will be called an IEP, which is an individual education plan. And so that's what we're going to try to kind of go more in depth about today. And I know all these terms kind of we're using may take some time to get used to. We're throwing out LEA, IEP, all those terms. So we actually do have a handout that we give our families during the transition time that kind of goes over all these things. So we like to kind of give that to our families so that when we do talk about these things, it's nice to go back and have a reference. So I'll go ahead and talk about the transition timeline. And so we like to line up the all of our meetings around the child's birthday. So about every 6 months, according to the child's birthday, we have these meetings. CVRC and the agency will come together, excuse me, to go over development. So 6 months prior to the child's 3rd birthday, which is what we call the transition meeting, we are going to kind of meet with the family to kind of go over a developmental plan. And this is kind of to discuss what the transition from early start services, the ones that you're receiving now, and then kind of transitioning to preschool. So a lot of times we talk to the families about what is your plan and what are your thoughts about your child after the age of 3? Would you like them to go to preschool? And we talk about other options that there are as well. And then prior to the child's 3rd birthday, close to the 3rd birthday, the school district will hold the assessment. And so we will have the CITI Kids teacher along with the preschool assessment consultation team, which is the PACT. That's a team of people who will be assessing your child and making sure that all those timelines and things are met. And then at the child's 3rd birthday, we hold what's called the IEP. So that's kind of the timeline that we go by. Okay, so now we'll kind of break it down for you. So we talked about, you know, at 6 months prior to the child turning 3, so at 2.5 years, we will hold that transition meeting. CITI Kids, kind of our teachers will do our portion. We'll talk about what we do during the transition meeting. And then CVRC, your caseworker, will kind of talk about what they do and their concerns and priorities as well, and what they're looking at closer to the age of 3. So when you're meeting with the CITI Kids teacher, during this meeting, we usually review the goals that are that we have been taking over the time we've seen your child. We're working on the help and updating those developmental levels. And then also when we did the initial, we came up with some goals. So we'll always review those goals and make sure the child's obtaining and working on those goals. We also talk about the child's strengths and concerns. So it's nice to know the strengths because we want to work on those, keep working on those, but also the concerns because we want to make sure that we're addressing those as well. We talk about the plan for preschool. If you're wanting your child to go to preschool, and a lot of those options include private schools, you know, obviously Clovis Unified, we have preschool programs here as well. Head Start has a preschool program. And we also just want to make sure that you're starting to think about that. Now, if we do the assessment, we obviously will propose that at the IEP, which will provide a preschool option there as well, if found eligible. We talk about your procedural safeguards and rights, and we'll kind of go over that a little bit later in the presentation about your parent rights as well. But we like to talk to you guys about that as well, because legally we offer the assessment, but there are, as you as the parent, you have the right to say, you know, I really don't know if I want this assessment or not. So we talk about the parent rights. And we also talk about the categories of eligibility for special education through the school district. And CVRC has different eligibility categories. So that's why we kind of like to touch on that a little bit as well. And then there are different possibilities of assessments coming up. Your child will kind of discuss that based on developmental levels when we're at the transition meeting. We also discuss what's going to happen during the IEP. So we kind of have an agenda that we like to talk to families about. And then, of course, I talked about that handbook that, you know, we want you to have those terms and know everything so you can reference back to everything we've talked about. And also, it's a great time to start thinking about questions that you may have and write those questions down, because I'm like probably you, I forget a lot of things that I think I want to ask, and then sometimes later I forget what I was going to ask. But we want to make sure at the IEP we address all your concerns. So CVRC will do that part, or we will do our part, and then CVRC kind of talks about their part at the transition and discuss what your concerns are and your priorities for your child. They have 5 categories of eligibility for after the age of 3, and so they go over that with you. And off the top of my head, I can't really remember all 5. I know it's cerebral palsy, epilepsy, autism. Help me out here if anyone can remember. Orthopedic impairment, and then there's a 5th category, which I'm not really fully understanding it, but they kind of hang on to these kids just for a little bit longer to see if they can make some progress, and then they kind of go from there. But they'll talk about that, and then they'll discuss their eligibility as well with their assessment, because they really want to make sure that the assessment they do really drives the services for after the age of 3. Okay, and then just some things that you can do to prepare ahead of time for that meeting. We always ask you guys for a lot of documentation. So FRC does a really good job of making these cute little binders that we give to families to hold all these medical records and doctors things and things that we hand out to you. So we'll make sure that if you don't have a binder, connect with FRC or your CITI Kids teacher and we'll get you a binder. But we'll always need this documentation for registration. So a copy of your birth certificate, of the child's birth certificate, copy of the immunization records, proof of residency, and that I just listed a couple. Sometimes those really need to be within the last 30 days because they want to keep things that are more current. We'll also do a home language survey that just makes sure that we're assessing your child in the language that they know best. And then also we'll update a release of exchange of information because new doctors sometimes are seen, and we want to just make sure that we're requesting those documents to have a well-rounded knowledge of what your child is, who they're seeing and why. Okay, and then I will let Desiree talk about the rest.
All right, and I think just a reminder for anyone that came in a little bit later, Leanne made the chat available. So if you have any questions, you're welcome to put them in the chat. That will go directly to myself, Leanne, and Leah, and we'll answer them at the end. Just a reminder, if you have any questions, because I know they can come up. So the wonderful, wonderful Leanne Keeler is running our Family Resource Center. And this has other available resources such as books, like early intervention processes. There's a little bit of a lending library you can see behind her with just some additional resources for any kind of developmental concerns you may have, but also just the wealth of knowledge that is Leanne and the ability for her to actively assist families within the transition process and continuing on through a special education, experience. So any questions you have directed towards Leanne is wonderful. So please, if you have questions, please reach out. Again, that transition section of the CITI Kids binder, again, reach out to any one of us. If you feel like you don't have it, or maybe you lost yours, because it happens, and you need one, we can get you one for sure. And then again, like Leah said before, if you have questions, even if you're a year out, your child just turned 2 and you haven't even gotten to your transition IFSP yet, if you have questions, just jot them down. That's what's so nice about that binder, is that if you've got a running list of, questions, and you get to that IFSP meeting and you're like, oh, okay, like this, I'm still curious about this, we're more than happy to answer those questions for you. Go ahead. Okay, so this is the 2-year, 9 months timeline where we start to prepare for and hold the assessment. So our IEP team is going to consist of typically the teacher, the psychologist, a speech therapist, any service providers that will address your child's needs through assessment. And that will get scheduled. We'll get an assessment date or dates on the book, as well as an IEP. And then you will be notified through like an assessment notice that we will send to you, likely through your CITI Kids teacher. And then assessment currently is occurring within in-person COVID-19 health protocols. We all are living in a very funky world. And so luckily, we've been able to adjust our assessment procedures to reflect safety and proactivity with that current situation. So be assured that that's something that we take very seriously and have thoroughly considered in our assessment processes. So again, the assessment, so the people that will be in the room for your assessment is typically the parent or parents, depending on quantity. We're doing 1 parent for assessment currently for COVID. Your CITI Kids teacher, the school psychologist, a speech therapist, our nurse, and then any number of service providers that will be looking to address needs that specifically meet the individualization for your child. So typically kiddos at this age will see we'll have a speech therapist that's involved, because most of our students we're considering speech delays, we're considering speech impairments, and expressive and receptive language impacts. All children have health, good or otherwise, and so that's why we involve the nurse. And we consider physical therapists, deaf and hard of hearing specialists, visual impairment specialists, all of that are, if applicable, to your child and their needs. So our assessment will involve observation, interviews with parents, direct evaluation. It can look like standardized testing, play-based assessment, sending home rating scales, which are kind of like forms that parents fill out to talk about your child and their skills at home, their social skills, language skills, skills relating to a possible category of eligibility, and then also medical records as well. So this will typically start, the assessment will start a 60-day timeline. So that's why we started at roughly the 2 years, 9 months. That way we can have the assessment within that timeline and hold an IEP before your child turns 3. That's our goal. I know some families with COVID, we kind of started an IEP and we're still waiting, just kind of the logistics of timing that COVID impacted us on. So the goal of assessment is to get a comprehensive understanding of your child's needs. So that's where, us as service providers, as early intervention specialists, school psychologists, speech therapists, we bring a certain expertise about development, and you bring the expertise of your child. So that's the goal in working as an IEP team, is that we can get a full understanding of the child's needs. The assessment results over time are gathered into an assessment report. And that assessment report is something you will have access to, and you will certainly have, before the IEP, to give yourself a chance to review it and look at it and get familiar with it. I mean, you sit in an IEP meeting and get handed an assessment report that's 25 pages long might be a little overwhelming. So we try to prepare you ahead of time so that you have access to that. And so ultimately the assessment is going to help us to identify educational need. And then educational need is going to lead to goals that address those needs and services where those goals can be met. And this is at or around 3 years. We will prepare for and hold the IEP meeting. So the Individualized Education Program. So currently they're held via teleconference. Again, another condition of COVID. And then we will, no worries. Kind of a brief review of the IFSP outcomes. Typically your CBRC service coordinator will also attend the IEP. And that way we can kind of close things out around the 3rd birthday. But since the transition is held at 2.5 years and the IEP is held at 3 years, you're still getting early intervention services and work within the outcomes that were written for your child. It is also advised that since there's not a limit on how many people could be in a teleconferenced IEP, you have your spouse, both parents, anybody that is not necessarily a party, but someone that can help aid you in asking questions, maybe think clearly with you, a grandparent, that someone that knows that child and can help you should you have any questions that you may not be able to think of in the moment. So that you're welcome to bring whoever may help in that regard. And so part of taking kind of a slice from the IFSP, we will discuss the child's strengths and your concerns for their development and for their growth after the age of 3. That's a big component of it. Then we will look at eligibility. So part of the assessment process is to ensure that we understand the needs of every child. And sometimes we get to the end of that assessment and we go, every single developmental area is within reason, within normal limits. So your child who is 34 months at assessment has 33 to 35 month age equivalencies for language, for cognition, for gross motor, all of those areas that we're constantly monitoring. And that's a fabulous place to be. It can be really scary to go and have support and services and then find at the end of the assessment that your child may not qualify. But it's always with the support and understanding and representation through assessment. And then we will talk about the goals that address the educational needs that were found in the assessment. And through the whole IEP, we encourage input from everyone, parents and guardians, the teacher, a school psychologist. We even have a general education teacher. Clovis Unified is very fabulous, in my opinion. I'm a little biased as a former preschool teacher, about the inclusion of general education exposure to children who are in special education and requiring special education services. So all that to say that when you have a child who will transition to preschool, there will be some exposure to general education peers. That means modeling like appropriate language, general education curriculum, general education activities. There will always be some percentage and some amount of exposure because we think that every child we want them all to be together and all to be friends, and we love that. And then ultimately at the end would be signature and finalization of the IEP. Okay. So after the IEP, your child qualifies, okay? We've held the meeting, you're like, okay, cool. They give you the goals, and then they give you the school site where those goals can be met, and or a certain program or a certain, a setting that your child will get services. And we're like, okay, we're good, we've got this. So you will be offered an observation, which is an opportunity to observe the placement or the class that is recommended in the IEP. This is kind of funky right now because of the in-person stuff. I believe that we are allowing families to start children in those programs and then do an in-person observation when in-person admittance is allowed, when there's more people allowed on campus. So I know that there's kind of that caveat of COVID, so I apologize. And then registration occurs through our Family Resource Center. So when we talk about those different documents that we have gathered at the transition IFSP, and we have them for the IEP, they're for the purpose of registration. So your initial IFSP, when you first start with CITI Kids, will involve a registration. But for those families that have a Fancher Creek homeschool, or a Fugman homeschool, or a Weldon homeschool, registration will need to happen separately before the age of 3 and before services can start after the IEP meeting. And Leanne is our fabulous registration guru who can help us and get everything where we need to go, because she's familiar with all the school sites and all of the paperwork that's necessary. And then again, registration is imperative. That's why we try to have those documents ready ahead of time, so that way you can start services immediately after, your child can start services immediately after registration. So the next option, if your child does not qualify, again, in that preschool transition packet that is sent home for the IFSP, options can include anything from being at home and just kind of waiting until, their preschool age at the age of 4, private childcare, private preschool, even Head Start. And we have flyers that are available to you. Even CVRC has offered other flyers like Stone Soup, other possible like services and community outreach options that are available. So it's not our intention to say you don't qualify, bye, but to give you continuing early childhood education opportunities for your child. So the state-funded preschools that exist, oh, sorry. That one little part, no worries. Like those that are on CUSD campus, Clovis Unified campuses. So they admit children that are going to be on or before, I'm missing the little labels over that, December 1st. So that your kiddo is going to be 4 between, January and December 1st, then they can start preschool that August. So that's why we try to offer you, if your child does not qualify, we try to offer any kind of assistance between that 36 months and the 4-year range as well.
Okay, so we know that was a lot of information, I want you guys to remember that you do not need to memorize this right now. We are all here to help you get through this. We didn't expect you to, be an expert by the time this little training is over. We just want to get your feet wet. We want you to be able to anticipate what to expect. And I wanted to touch a little bit more on, we talked about qualifying or not qualifying. A real easy summary to think of is one of three things happens when your child turns 3. Either they're not going to qualify for continued special ed services. They could qualify, but for speech only, which means they wouldn't go to a site for preschool, but they would, for lack of a better word, get an outpatient type service where they're going to go to their home school, and let's say the IEP is written for 30 minutes of speech a week. You're going to take them to their home school, your neighborhood school, and they'll receive those services there for that allotted amount of time with their speech therapist. Or then the third option was what we discussed, special education preschool. But what I really want to talk to you about too is, what does eligible mean? As a mom, I can't tell you how confusing it was to just about the time I got one system figured out, you would deal with another agency and they'd be like, oh no, just kidding, that doesn't apply to us. So let's go over this side. What does eligible mean? So being eligible for one agency doesn't mean eligible for all. So like, for instance, let's say you have that IEP and your child qualified for special education preschool. So they're going to qualify for services through school. It doesn't necessarily mean they're still going to qualify for regional service. Vice versa, your doctor could order, let's say, say your child has a diagnosis and they need OT. Well, they could need that medically. It doesn't mean that that's going to necessarily be a part of their school-based services. There's a term called a medical model versus educational model. So for services that happen in the school setting, your child's education has to be impacted. So, and I don't want to, throw too much information at you, but I just want you to be prepared that each agency is going to have their own criteria, okay? And I don't want you to feel overwhelmed. This is where I want to come in and say, we're all here for you, okay? We are going to help you get through this. It's not ever that you're doing this alone, okay? And again, the Family Resource Center, we will help you, your teacher will help you, your service coordinator will help you. Again, the Family Resource Center doesn't go away. So even after the age of 3, whether your child qualifies or not, the Family Resource Center serves the whole school district. If you're here in Clovis, you can call, you can ask questions 2 years down the road. If you have a question and say, my child's struggling in kindergarten, what do I do? That's what we're here for. We're here for that family support to help you understand how to access the resources that your family needs. So that being said, let's go ahead. Leah or Desiree, do you guys want to start looking through the chat and see? I'm going to go ahead and put on the next screen. This is how you can contact us. I'll leave it up there. And then let's go ahead and look at the chat. Are there any questions, ladies?
I think that one thing, oh, I'm sorry. Leah and I just went at the same time. We do that all the time to each other.
It's okay, go Desi.
One thing I did want to stress that I didn't note before was that all of this is done with parent permission.
Thank you.
So
Yeah.
And an assessment cannot be held without your permission.
Right.
So ideally, we would all be on the same page for, you know, understanding your child's needs, and we would enter into an assessment process with that agreement.
Mhm.
But if you get to the point where you're like, I think that, you know, preschool in a couple of months would be too much for our family, too much for my child, you're welcome to decline an assessment. You get, you know, 2 weeks, 3 weeks into an assessment, and you're like, now I think it's too much. You're welcome to revoke that. You get to through the assessment, you get to the IEP, and you think, I don't think this is right for my family. I think we'll wait and come back. You can decline services at the IEP. So don't think that an assessment or qualification or enrollment is mandatory. It's
Right.
not like a mortgage. You know, you can't, like, you know, you have the option of, you know, saying, okay, this probably is not the right time for my family, and that's completely okay. So our goal is to support you and to find ways to assist your family. And we're looking towards assessment if services are appropriate, but you are well within your right. You are well within your, you know, role as a parent to say, I'm going to take a step back from this and maybe consider this a year down the road, 2 years down the road, when we're closer to kindergarten, whatever that looks like for your family. I just want to make sure that this is all with your permission. We're not telling you have to. So
Right.
we're not telling you to pay your taxes. It's just, yeah. It's so for the benefit
Right.
of your child, but certainly with your permission and granting us that. So.
And Desiree, that's so important. I'm so glad that you brought that up, because that's something that we all want you families to remember is you know your child best. You are the expert on your child. And one of the things that the Family Resource Center, the value that we have is that I want families to feel like they're an informed member of their child's team. I always remember that feeling of sitting at the table those first couple years and not even knowing who was there. Like, I didn't even know what their roles were, and just feeling like a deer in the headlight and feeling like I'm just the mom. You know, what do I have to contribute? And I want you to realize you are valuable, both legally, and our teams want that parent input. And so don't ever feel like you don't have anything to contribute, because you do. All right. So I know Mary had her hand raised. Mary, I'm going to go ahead and unmute you. I think I did. Unmute there. Mary?
Okay. Can you hear me?
Uh-huh.
Hey. Okay. I do have a question. Missy is now a couple months over 3, and we're starting to do the assessments now that this COVID is allowing us to do this. Now, we had a behaviorist for her through CVRC since she was little baby. And once she hit 3, they no longer do it. So, and she has very hard times with transitions, in and out of the car, in and out of the house. Do you guys know of any behaviorists? Because I do know she has her first neurologist appointment next month, but they didn't even want the insurance, and we have pretty good insurance through our work, but how do you find a behaviorist? Because it was really helping her. Yeah, we've had her since birth, and she's my granddaughter, but we're adopting her. So she does have some of those, you know, issues. We do a lot of PECs with her. We do a lot of sign language with her. And she's starting to finally get verbal a little bit. But with this COVID stuff, this whole year has been just down the drain for doctors.
So that would be my first recommendation is, has her pediatrician, do they have anyone that they recommend?
They actually mentioned Stanford. And I'm like, I'm not driving 4 hours one way with her. She does not do cars. She doesn't sleep in a car. She's the only child I know that doesn't do that.
Sure. You're talking more like a weekly type therapy
Right.
based.
Absolutely. Because she came twice a week. And
Right.
for that to be gone and the consistency with her routine, she's very routine.
Right.
Yeah, but we do have the speech therapist and we do have the teacher Zooms and stuff like that. And she does have the neurologist appointment, but I didn't know who would take, our Blue Shields insurance. So
So,
I didn't
I
know if
mean,
you guys knew.
the obvious question would, or answer would be to go on the Blue Shield website and search under their providers. But I also talk to that neurologist when you go into them.
Mm-hmm.
That behavior that you're struggling with, talk to him, because is the neurologist going to be at Children's, or is it a private practice?
Well, no, it is a private practice here in Clovis. Children's, oh my gosh, was out until like next year. Crazy.
Oh, I believe it. Okay.
And so we're going in this one. It actually took us 7 months to get into this one here in Clovis.
Yeah, we're very impacted on child neurology. I would absolutely talk to them. Okay. Because again, they're gonna have that personal referral. Typically, that professional people that they've either worked with or heard of. Okay.
Gotcha.
Yeah, sure.
And one other thing, do you guys have any information on transitions? Either like from one area to another area, or I do a lot of I try to do the PACs, but that's just not seeming to help her anymore.
Right.
Are you meaning like when you're trying to go from one place to another and trying to kind of,
It screams, the kicking. She knocked my tooth out, a hair. Yeah, wow. She throws her head back. So we got her a helmet. The doctor recommended a helmet for her.
Yeah.
But yeah, now she's 52 pounds. She's a big girl. She's 3'4", and no clue who the dad is and stuff like that. But some things, and we know something not quite right, but we haven't been able to get to the doctor quite yet to figure this all out. Yeah. And she jumps. She's a daredevil, and it's scary. She's a runner. So she'll run. That door's open, she'll run underneath the car. She'll run and hide. It's very scary.
Mary, who's your CITI Kids teacher?
Courtney.
Oh, great.
Yes, I love her. Yes.
Yes, she's wonderful. So let's talk with teacher Courtney and see what type of maybe in-home modeling she can do to help you, what type of resources, okay?
Right. And even if we have to pay for it, we need it. We need help with her. Okay.
We'll collaborate with Courtney and see what we can figure out, okay?
That'd be fantastic.
Wonderful. Do you see anyone else with their hand raised? Anyone? Leah?
I don't think so.
I don't think so. Not right now. And I don't think I saw anything posted in the chat.
I can't even figure out how to get to the chat. You're ahead of me. I'm just poking buttons here, girls. I figure if I keep hitting it, something will pop up.
It doesn't look like it.
Okay.
Anyone with any questions?
No.
That was a great audience.
All right. Well,
I asked some questions to Leanne. Sorry, this is Amanda. I asked 3 questions in the chat to Leanne.
To me. Okay, so hold on. Amanda, let me see if I can function here. Okay, I'm gonna stop.
It's okay. Sharing. I'll just ask you so you don't lose your screen.
Okay, there we go. Oh,
I was just gonna ask what the types of preschool classes are, because we know all the kiddos here are on different functioning levels. Some are medically complex and may need medical intervention.
Yeah.
So what are the different, is there only one class and there's a range? No. Are there a couple? There's one at Garfield. Can you guys explain that to us, and also the time frame typically?
Do you want me to speak to that?
Yes, I did want to add though that on the Clovis Unified website under special education, there is a PowerPoint. In fact, I just posted it yesterday, that each year that during the Community Advisory Committee, we go over all the different programs there are. And on there it talks about the different types of preschool programs, and you can view that on the website, or you can download it. All right, and I will let's see.
And
I'm trying to figure out.
It's also in your transition packet that we give to you.
Thank you.
It will discuss some of the preschool programs that Clovis Unified offers as well.
So to speak to it just a little, you know, just a brief overview, there are children that are going to have mild needs and children that are going to have severe needs. So that kind of spectrum of needs, there's going to be a spectrum of preschool services that reflect that. And so when we consider like minor speech delays, you know, they've got, you know, they're coming up on 3, they're potty trained, they're learning their letters and their colors, and then they just need a little bit of speech support. That is available at the homeschool, like as Leanne said, kind of like an outpatient. There's a language lab, which is a couple days out of the week, but is like a speech type preschool. There's a little bit more time, but not a full school week and school day. We have our SDC preschools that we see a wide variety of children with speech and language impairments, autism, like an intellectual disability, you know, that are by a number of reasons for genetic abnormalities, Down syndrome, any number of things that kind of fit into like the qualifying disabilities can be met at an SDC preschool as well, as long as the services reflect provision of goals for your child. We have autism programs, and autism programs are going to be more intensive. They run a 5-hour day versus an SDC preschool, which is a 3-hour day. And that's reflective of the early childhood best practice, and it's an evidence-based practice about structure and intervention for children who are on the autism spectrum. And then, you know, we also have a preschool program that is for children who are categorized under the severely disabled category, which is, you know, children that are medically fragile, you know, have equipment in the sense that they've got tracheotomies, G-tubes, are non-ambulatory, non-verbal. So instruction and medical support through that kind of program. So again, it's a broad spectrum of needs for all the kiddos, and then again a spectrum of preschools that will support that as well. And then within that, you've got considerations for deaf and hard of hearing, visual impairment. So there's kind of different spots on the map even within that spectrum. So I hope that was helpful, Amanda.
Yes, sorry, I have another child here with the music.
No worries.
And what did you say was the age? Was the age kind of ideal cutoff? You said by the time they start the new school year?
So are you talking about for preschool?
Yes.
So all children who qualify for services after the age of 3, that is their 3rd birthday. So let's say they turn, you know, the last week of school is Monday, June 10th, and they turn 3 Sunday, June 9th. They can start that Monday if they're registered. So the age of 3 transition, that'll be immediate. Kindergarten is going to be 5 before September 1st. So that's a kindergarten reference, but for preschool, because we're talking about preschool, I'm getting in my head, my preschool mindset where I'm telling families about the preschool mindset. But for CITI Kids, it is 3 years. The general education preschool program requires you to be 4 before December 1st. But that is pending, you know, like, you know, a child not being eligible and following the assessment and whatnot.
Something to remember too, we get asked a lot, is how much does it cost? So if your child qualifies for special education preschool at the age of 3, there's no charge. I mean, that's just part of their free and appropriate public education. So again, going back to what we talked about before, at age 3, there's that change. Birth to 3, the regional center is paying for services. After age 3, your local education agency is going to take over providing special education services, okay? Anything educationally related like that. It looks like Mary has a question again. Let's see. Mary? There you go. Oh, I'm trying to unmute you. There you go.
Okay, great. Now, I don't think we qualified for that because we pay for CITI Kids through.
Okay, so what you're paying for is there's a term called a family service plan fee, I believe it's called.
Oh, okay.
Is that, and so some families, when you go through regional center, there's a fee they charge every year, but it's minimal.
Right.
I think it's less than $200.
Yeah,
it's
like
200.
Right at 3, something like that.
And that covers all your services for the entire year.
Okay, fantastic. Now my question is, she turned 3 in July, so is she able to go to a preschool now?
So has she had her IEP yet?
Not yet. I think we're starting that Monday finally, and there's a lot of assessments to follow.
Right. So that's what's going to determine that. Okay. Is that IEP is what she qualifies for. So what the regional center has done right now because of COVID is kiddos who have not had their IEP, but they turn 3, they're able to continue with their regional center services. So the CITI Kid services, that's why she's still getting those right now.
Gotcha.
Even past age of 3 it's a little, different because of COVID. Normally that's not how that would work. But but that's how they have managed to make sure kiddos are still receiving some type of service because schools are so impacted on trying to, due to the closure.
Gotcha. So if she does qualify or if she doesn't qualify, she would still be able to go to public preschool at like 4?
Yeah. Public preschool does not, their special education preschool, if she qualifies for that, then that's what, you would be offered. If she doesn't, then yes, you could look at that state-funded preschool later on, or again, like Leah and Desiree talked about, private preschool in the meantime. A lot of families opt for that.
Gotcha.
There is that gap,
right?
Unfortunately.
Well, thank you, and all this information is very appreciated.
You're welcome, and we know it's a lot. Again, we don't expect anyone to remember it all. We have paperwork on all of this. All you have to do is, contact any of us, and we will get you that information. Okay. Fantastic. Sometimes it's so much easier to have it in writing in front of you. But again, look at those CITI Kid binders. There's a lot of information in there as well. You can always email the Family Resource Center or call anytime, and we'll help you out. Okay.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Sure. Does anyone have any other questions?
Hi, DG.
DG.
Yes.
Did you have a question?
Yes, I have a question.
Okay.
So my daughter is turning 3 on 10th of October, and we have IEP in coming week. I have a question, like when she will start the school. So with this COVID-19, what's going on in schools right now, how her school is going to be? Like, are they going to, it's still the Zoom sessions, like how it is going with the other Clovis Unified schools? I'm talking about the other public schools like Fugman or Value, or how they are conducting all the Zoom classes for the elementary kids. So are they, is it going to be like that? Or because these kids, they are hardly sit in front of computer for any Zoom classes.
Yeah.
Otherwise, they will keep watching YouTube for hours together. But if you ask them, like if somebody's interacting or something kind of like Zoom classes, I don't know how she's going to cooperate for that. So I'm quite curious to know that how it is going to be. Thank you.
Very good question. Yeah, Leanne, did you want to expand
Sure.
on that a little bit?
I will say right now, it is changing by the moment. So just, within the last, about 2 weeks, they have started allowing teachers to bring on small cohorts of our special education preschoolers in certain programs and our SDC programs, not all. As soon as they just about got figured that out, we got new direction from the state that has just come down and from the county saying that now we can have larger groups of 14 children and 2 adults. Now, that being said, special education has a lot of different details and obstacles to overcome to try and figure out the logistics. But what I'm trying to get across, even though it is rapidly changing, it is all moving towards getting kiddos back onto campus and delivering in-person services. That may not be full like it was before, 5 days a week, obviously, but they're actively, as we speak, working on making that happen. And so I feel I wouldn't want to be a special education administrator for all the money in the world right now, because the minute they get something planned, it is all changing. So they're working really hard trying to get our kiddos back onto campus in a safe manner, and they're polling parents because they understand, for every parent that is biting at the bit to get their child back on campus, you have another parent who is like, there's no way I would send my kid back to school. And they're trying to be respectful and meet those needs. And so I wish I had a more concrete answer, but like I said, I was in a meeting yesterday, and that was all shared. I would encourage families bringing that up. Our early start families are considered a part of our, special education in Clovis Unified. If you have not heard of the Community Advisory Committee, I really encourage you to check that out. Again, you can go onto the Clovis Unified website, go under parents, and you can click on special ed. You will find information there about the Community Advisory Committee. I am on that executive committee as a Family Resource Center rep. It is a parent-led, state-mandated committee that where families who have children in special education and administrators get together, and you find out the latest of what's going on. It gives you a voice. It's not an advocacy group. It's a it's just that opportunity to let parents have that voice and to know what's going on with special ed. Okay, so I really would encourage you to check that out. You'll also see the Family Resource Center. You'll see all the workshops that I have coming up, and anything to do with special ed. Again, like I said, you'll find that PowerPoint there that goes over all the different programs that are there. I have a binder that is downloadable under parent resources, much like your CITI Kids binder, only it's for IEPs. And so again, there's different sets of rules and parent rights and all of that. It's all in that binder, and you can check that out as well. So I hope that helps. I'm sorry that wasn't a firmer answer, but just know they are working actively to get kiddos back on campus, okay? Mm-hmm. So I think we're just about out of time, you guys. We're at 7 o'clock. We want to let you all get some rest, and our hardworking teachers, get ready for tomorrow.